All right, we're back. I'm here with this little Mongoose Ibach Series comp. I got it off of Facebook Marketplace or Craigslist or something last summer for 50 bucks. I was driving to a friend's house. It was on sale. I stopped. Originally I thought I was going to pull it apart for parts, but like no one really cares about this LX stuff so much, and a lot of bikes really are worth more as parts. I have so many parts for sale right now and so much stuff I haven't even listed yet. And it's kind of cool. I don't know, it's like, I guess 90's or something. Straight bladey fork. I think I was reading about them last year, and they were sort of like Mongoose's first foray out of BMXs or something. So it's like a kind of BMX-y 26-inch mountain bike. That's still holding air in the tires. Tires look good. I think I'm going to try and resist the urge to go crazy. I'm going to do the most basic tune-up ever. And it's been sitting in my stand for days. I got all my red stuff for the Terry, so I'm going to finish this bike. I'm going to do a how to use taps video for the Terry, and then I'm going to do the reddening of the Terry. I'm going to get this one done, get some more stuff on eBay, some stuff packed. It's my birthday, so I got to get ready. I'm going to go to the bar with some of my dog park friends. It's going to be like a whole thing, man. But let's do this bike a tune-up. Like, saddle's a little mangled. I'm going to find a different saddle for it for sure. And what do you do when you first get a bike you do a tune-up on? The very first two most important things are to make sure the seat post and stem are not frozen. Alright, that moves. Because it is a real, huge, ridiculous mistake to put a bunch of time and effort into bikes that are just boat anchors. Oh yeah, alright, moves. Now, this bike is basically all original. It's basically in pretty good shape. There's no wear at all on the brake surface. There's no play in the hub. It spins, it's smooth. I put my finger on the frame next to it. You can feel vibrations. It was all chunky and clunky. That feels good. No wear on this brake surface. Smoothish. Grab the fork. Oh, there's definitely play in the headset, so I can physically feel the headset rocking. I can see these cups moving. So I know no matter what I do, I gotta open this headset. We'll probably sneak and grease it and get it adjusted correctly. It's probably missing a spacer. All loose headsets are always missing a spacer, so the top nut's bottoming out. Well, that's not true, not all, but usually. So if we put it together, thought they did a good job, but the top nut's bottoming out on the fork itself, on the top of this threaded steer tube, instead of being able to bottom out and tighten against the little upper cup, which is like a jam nut. These cables look original, but they're not rusty at all. They're probably fine. This one's got a little bit of rust, but it doesn't seem to care. It's a little cruddy. I think I will probably replace this shift cable. It's pretty sticky and cruddy. I'll probably see if I can just do it and just lube the housing. We're also checking all of the housing to make sure it's not broken, split, explode, rusty, crusty, gross. It all looks fine. Try to save money. I might sand these brake pads and then go ride them and see if they stop all right. So they stop real easy. They're cool. If it's like hard to stop or slow or doesn't feel good, I will put new pads on. Same thing about the tires. They look fine. That's my new tires. I'm not gonna. They look almost brand new. They're not rusty or crusty at all. They're not cracking. These pads literally have like no wear on them. They might be rock hard, but they might be fine. Cool old SE pedals. Wait, I feel something. There's definitely play in this bottom bracket. So I'll probably crack it open, pull the cranks off, crack the bottom bracket open, sneak and grease it, put it back together. Or you could try and just sneak it. You can hope it's just this cup on the other side. You can definitely try and get a lock ring tool on here and make this lock ring loose and see if you can just tighten the cup and blah, 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 all that. I'll probably just pull them real quick. It's not a big deal. I'm not going to hurt anything. These pedals are kind of cool, though. I doubt they're worth any money, but, I might pull them off, put them on eBay, put some generic plastic BMX style pedals on because they're really the most comfortable. That's really what everybody likes and wants. Set this chain checker to 0 and we're hoping... Nah, the chain's worn out, of course. Why wouldn't it be worn out? 7-speed cassette. We might take a look at it. Might see if it's worn out too. If it's good, maybe I'll put a new chain on. If it's bad, I'll definitely do a new chain and a new cassette. I'll probably just sneak and grease the hubs. I'm going to try and get away with doing as little as possible, but already I'm finding all this stuff. Because ain't that just the way? Well, I guess the best way is to say bye-bye-bye to this dead chain. Keys to the city. Yeah, this cable's so kind of stuck in there. It's all loosey-goosey. It can't have tension because it's too tight at yuckers. So here's a perfect example of why I went straight to pulling the cranks. Went to check to make sure the drive side, which you cannot get a tool on the crank in the way, you might be able to fight this side. Went to go put my sick Zog tool on it, and it is loosey-goosey. So I would have been pulling the cranks anyways. And I don't want to get in here and inspect this chainstay damage. Chain's been dropped a few times. Sometimes these get really chewed up. I've seen these cut all the way through from chains. And I'm looking, and the paint's scraped off, but there's really no damage to the metal. It's totally cool. But we got to get this cup real tight. Don't fall off, tool. There's still some play. I don't want, if the bottom bracket was too tight, I'm trying to tighten this cup down so it's going to cinch into the bearings and not actually the cup tight and just come loose again. So I want to make sure that I get this cup insanely tight. And this, on English bottom brackets, this cup is reverse threaded. So yes, it looks like I'm going lefty-loosey, but this is really righty-tighty. It's probably tight enough. Still someplace. We're still gonna open her up and sneak and grease her. Something I like about the single stands really is to flip the bike around to work on. The double stand to come around to work from the back or try to work on this side. That's fine. When you're a professional bike mechanic, you can get really good at working from the wrong side and reaching around the stand and all that stuff. But I got no ego attached. I'm gonna flip it around, make it real easy for me to open this side up. Hook spannery bottom brackety tool. Hooking that lock ring. Dope. And it's this little pin spannery tool. I got all kinds of pin spanners, bro. I love pin spanners. See, this one's a little too annoying. It doesn't fit. Got my favorite Park adjustable pin spanner. It basically always fits everything. Now, if I was a lazy mechanic, I could just tighten this up, cinch the lock ring back on, call it adjusted. I'm not going to do that. I want to open it up. I want fresh grease in. I'm going to be a lazy mechanic and a bad mechanic and not clean the whole thing, put new bearings, new grease, and all that in. I'm considering this more of a tune-up than an overhaul. So we're going sneak and grease. I'm inspecting it to make sure it's not dead. This grease is old and sticky and gooey and muddy, but it's not dead. It's not wax. I'm going to shoot it with my new little grease gunny tool. I got this from the internet website, the Temu. I don't want to sound like I'm sponsored by them, so I don't know why I keep saying it, but it's like $2 for the grease and like 10 or 12 for this gun. And I can just sneak, sneak, sneak. Fresh grease. Yay! Do over here too. If I really wanted to, I'd wipe this stuff off. If it was a hub, I probably would, especially if it's any dirt. It looks clean, it's just gross. And now it's going to soften up, and this new fresh grease is going to make this old grease soften up a little bit. And you know, that's good enough for a tune-up. Eventually, people are just going to ride it till it dies and replace it with a sealed cartridge anyways. A bunch of grease has been pushing out of this over the years. It's been pushing out of the cup past the seal over the spindle. That's a good thing. Too much grease is a waterproof seal. Too much grease pushing out and stuff is great. Of course, there is no dust sleeve in here. I think I have a bunch of extra ones I've saved off dead bottom brackets. I'm going to throw one in because I'm a good person. Water gets down here, it creeps in there, it wrecks the bearings. Here's a bunch of spare bottom bracket parts I'm keeping for reasons I don't understand. guess the dust sleeve makes sense. I don't know. It's accordion. Doesn't really matter. Most of this should probably be in the recycling. I don't know what's wrong with me. Accordion sleeve. Keep all that water out. This non-drive side is just normal righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. It's a little old and sticky, so it's going to be a little bit harder to feel the correct bearing adjustment, but not really. It is impossible to get a correct bearing adjustment on a bottom bracket without the cranks on. So we're going to press this crank on. These cranks came off easy, man. Old mechanics were so not hammer mechanics. Things were on so gingerly. And fine. And it's probably really the way they're supposed to be. Alright. This crank is pressed on, and I can grab the end. You want the pedal off for this, because you don't want to feel any play in the pedal, you just want to feel the crank. I can wiggle it back and forth, and I can feel it wiggling. So even though the bottom bracket felt a little tight to my bare hand, it is not tight. Little wiggle, no wiggle, no wiggle, lots of wiggle. So it's not perfectly round. I want it to feel pretty round and smooth. I want no play, but if it's not perfectly round, no play is mean it's too tight some spots. So I might accept a little bit of play in the most loosey-goosey spot. None in the second most loosey-goosey spot. None anywhere else. So I'm going to call that good enough. Because if it's too tight, it's going to burn the bearings out really fast, and that's not fun or cool. While the cranks are off, I should have come in here and scrubbed and rubbed all the grease off. Whatever. People are just going to ride it in the rain and get it all gross anyways. The lock ring. It's a little ring. It's knurled. It's got little notches taken out for the little ring spanner tool. And what this does is it lets you get the cup adjusted where you want. You cinch this ring down tight against the cup and against the frame, and that keeps the cup from coming out of adjustment. In theory. So hold the cup with a pin spanner, cinch, a little lock ring body down, hope the cup doesn't move. Still a tiny bit of play. Yeah, tiny bit of play in the loosest spot and none in the second loosest spot, or the tight spots. I'm gonna call that probably good enough. And that's the crank sneaked and greased. First, let's pop this dude on. Remember, cranks always go opposite of each other. I've seen quite a lot of people put the cranks on, usually both facing the same direction, so you have to pedal both times. I think some wheelchairs are that way. Maybe arm cycles. How them water bottle bosses. Oh yeah, there's a move. Cool, baby. Got the cable all loosey-goosey. Let's get this stem out of the way. See if we can just wiggle, wiggle, wiggle. Alright, I'm going to gently dangle it here. Hopefully it doesn't dangle any of the cables. That looks like it's probably not bottomed out. It probably just came loose. It probably doesn't need a headset spacer. That's good. A lot of mechanics will not open a headset and undo it up, because they have no idea what's in there. Like, it feels fine, it's fine. I'm going to open it up and hopefully it can sneak and grease it. Hopefully the bearings don't fall out everywhere and make this a huge time-consuming project. Seems fine. Got them caged bearings. Stick it in that cage. Squirt, squirt, squirt. Some nice fresh grease. You would of course not do this on a vintage race bike. I think it's going to get raced. You pull it apart and clean it in acetone or kerosene and put fresh bearings in every time and wear a hazmat suit and clean it in a sterile environment and pack it with only campy grease or whatever. But you know, this is just a tune-up on a cruddy old bike. This is nicer than most of them are going to be. I'm going to put some on the inside for the stem. Greasy. Put this stuff back on in the right order. Hey, brat. Stop turning. This probably just rolls right back up. Oh, don't skip a step. I got this top nut to put on. I push down on this cable hanger while starting those threads. Everything's turnaround maintained. Alright, there we go. This bike has one unfortunate thing. The shifters are integrated with the brake levers. This shifter works fine, but is missing the top cap, which is a little sad. So I'm just debating on making this a one by as well. I'm not gonna. Thought about it. Let's leave it ugly like that. Hopefully no one cares. The shifter has to be replaced or a top cap has to be found. So be it. You can't get a headset adjusted in the stand. You can come close, but you can't do it. I'm gonna wait till the bike's on the ground so we can do it. It's kind of a pain to do it that way, but really it's the way you can get a headset adjusted correctly. So I got the old wheel truing stand. I threw these dudes in. Wheels are perfectly true. Took the old spoke tensioner and checked a bunch of spokes. They all seem totally legit. Cracked these hubs open and snuck some grease in. And now I'm just closing it back up. I usually like really clean the outside first, then I clean it again after, so I'm being lazy. One really important thing to do while the hubs are cracked open, not so open the bearings fall out, but just open enough, is to put a cone wrench and a regular wrench on them and make sure the other side's actually tight. So you don't get it all back together and try and get an adjustment and have that side start moving too. It's happened lots of times. It's really important on cassette rear hubs because you can't tighten that side that's under the cassette unless you pull the whole cassette off again and open the whole hub up. It's the whole thing. Try to knock the dirt off of these guys. There's no dirt between the metal to metal surfaces, causing it to teeter-totter or come loose later. And then with front hubs, you want to get them, so that's a little crunchy. You want to get them basically, we can just barely almost tell there's a little bit of play in there, but not an obvious amount, and not no play, because that quick release, when you tighten it down, really sucks it up and makes it tight. There's a bunch of ways of doing this. Guys use axle vices, guys use all sorts of stuff. I usually just try a couple of times to get it. I think I nailed that the first time. Sometimes it takes me 2 or 3 tries to nail it because the cone tries to move, the axle moves. Sometimes I like to do the 3-wrench method. I'll hold a wrench on the backside through the spokes and hold this cone wrench at the same time. So nothing, the axle can't move, the cone can't move, and then you can tighten it down. That is my preferred way. Never the right way, the preferred way. Barely any play. I really ought to clean this bike. I don't want to clean the bike. I just don't want to do it. But I should. I know. What are you going to do? Alright, let's check that back one. A little rusty, a little crusty. Let's put the spring and the skewer back together so parts don't go flying everywhere and get lost. It's got this 7-speed cassette. I want to look at it in the light with a rag. Rub the front tooth, so not the front of the cassette, but from the chain's eye view, where the chain actually rubs the teeth. And what you want to see is a bunch of casting marks from where the teeth were stamped. Basically stamped like scissors stamping out a piece of metal. And it leaves a rough edge, and that's what I want. I don't want to see it polished. So this bottom tooth is like mostly rough, a little polished on the inside. This next tooth, it's a little polished, especially polished up over the top. More down the valley as it sort of wears out down the valley, and then as it's more and more worn, it'll wear out over the top. I don't know, they're pretty clean, they're pretty polished. Will it hold the new chain? Probably. Do I trust it to because it hates me? All bikes hate me. Should I trust it? Should I put a new cassette on? This cassette's also tiny. I could put a nice big cassette on. I always clean bikes and then I try and sell them and I have all this labor into them. People are like, man, I'll give you nothing for it. Man, it's in your way. Take $200 when it's really like a $500 bike. Got 50 bucks into it plus what I'm putting into it. I'm probably only get 200 for it, so be losing money if I do anything else. I'm gonna pop the cassette off anyways though, because I want to be able to make sure that bolt's tight. It's got one little barely baby spot. So it's true. This bike doesn't actually have a lot of miles. I was kind of surprised that chain was even worn out. So So take a potentiometer. These are like 80 bucks from Park. You can get them off eBay for like 20 bucks. Doesn't matter if it's calibrated very well. Not really. I'm not super worried about it. But what I am doing is checking all the spokes in the same spot to make sure they're within a couple of pounds. And these are all about 22. I haven't seen any lower or higher. The drive side's usually tighter because they're in more to make room for that cassette. So this side's all going to be 18. Cool. Every once in a while you get a wheel like this and it seems fine. And a couple of these are like 28 and a couple of them are like 15. And you gotta go through and see if you can mess with all the spokes and balance that. Make them all the same, or you realize that the rim itself is dented or damaged and someone just trued it without caring what the tension was. So a bunch of them are really tight, a bunch of them are really loose. And if you ride on it, it's always going to come back out. You're going to wiggle that tension out and the really tight ones are going to loosen up. And it'll never hold round and true. And the wheels are kind of actually dead. You can ride it for a while if you want. Don't sell it to somebody who's going to be a super commuter and have them come right back to you in like a week and be like, hey man, this wheel won't hold true. Okay, it's just a 7-seat cassette, I think. Cassettes, you need a chain whip. This is the chain whip pliers from Park I got real cheap the other day. Or you can use a regular chain whip. Just trying to hold the cassette. Spline cassette lock ring tool. I usually use an adjustable wrench, but I got this chain whip that's got the big opening on it. It's the size of the Park tools. Yeah. Cassette is off. Hub's free. It feels nice. I'm going to wipe a little bit of the really crusty dirt off. So I never open cassettes from the drive side because you really can't. So I open it from the non-drive. It's usually a 15 cone, 17 lock. I'm going to loosen this side up while pulling the drive side up high enough where I can get at the cone without dropping all the bearings on the floor at the bottom, which is tricky. So I'm keeping it held up, holding the cone. Oh, that's tight. Nice. If you didn't check, it wouldn't be tight and your whole adjustment would come loose and you'd be very sad. Hold the bottom and spin this up. Take a nice clean roll rag. Make sure there's no crust, dirt and grime. Trying to put more grime and hairs into it. Squeezing that grease. And kind of spin it and kind of get it flat so the bearings don't fall out. Kind of push it in while lifting the other side up while turning. No bearings falling out on the floor. Sneaked and greased this side, closing it up. Push stuff into the bench, my waist. Squeezing it, there's no play. So she's too tight. Holding the back side. A little play. Probably too much, really. Still feels like maybe too much. The cone and the lock nut are kind of tightened into each other right now, so I can kind of just turn them both. Almost no play. Let's just try and do one last. I'm going to try and just tighten them both a little bit. So I'm pushing both arms. A little bit of play, maybe too much. Not too tight. I can move the cone and lock nut at the same time. If it is too tight, you just strip the threads. And now there's none, which means it's too tight. Let's try and tighten just the cone. Back just the cone off while holding the lock nut. If there's any room for them to tighten into each other. Oh yeah. That feels about perfect. It's about perfect. Should we put this cassette back on? Should we see if it'll hold the chain? I don't know, this one gear looks like it won't. I'm not gonna waste my time. Ordered the parts. I found an almost brand new 7-speed cassette. I think I had on the Mission Special Schwinn for like 10 miles before I realized I needed a way bigger cassette to go up the hills around here. So it's essentially brand new. Essentially. It's not really any bigger, but it's got a front triple. It's cool. And a brand new Z chain, Z51, which is 18 speed, 21 speed, 24 speed. It's an indexing, shiftable chain. Perfect. Got it at a swap meet. I think it says $10 on it. I think I talked the guy down to like 5 or throwing in something else that cost 10. So, they're golden. Brand new parts don't cost me any real money, but I still have to remember they did cost me money. And not to forget to factor that in. Pajanga. These Shimano cassettes have one skinny ridge or spline and a bunch of fat ones. So what you got to do is find that skinny one and find it again on the cassette and line them up. So they only go in one way, so all the teeth are always facing the way that Shimano wants them to face to make the shifting good. That's all you want, just a few clicks. You don't want to go cray-cray. Just going to give it a real minor wipe down. Not getting out chemicals. Might as well hit most of this stuff while the wheel's out of the way. Back wheel with brand new cassette. And that fresh grease. Then once your freshly adjusted hub is in the frame, we're going to grab it and wiggle it side to side. Make sure it really is set up correctly. And there's no play. You want to feel that wheel click, 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 clicking it all from side to side. And it doesn't. What else we should have done when it was open? We should have sanded these pads. I'm 80% sure I'm going to replace, but still, sand these pads. I've got some 80 grit. Just doing a braking surface, getting the gloss off, any buildup, any hardness, any squeakiness, any road grime, oil. I do this on all new pads and all used pads. These are pretty springy. Here are some pedals that came to me somewhere. They're both a little tight with no play, which is better than loose. Weird, this super cheap thing from China is like not airtight. Hasn't. Must have plugged up the nipple, it's like exploding out the sides. Ugh. Grease is like one of the banes of my life. It's supposed to be easy, I just want it to work, and it's always plugging up or janking up or having problems. It's very annoying. You're annoying, grease. It's always fighting you, and you're like, no, I'm trying to do real work. And the grease is always like, no, you're gonna stop and unplug me or fix me up or... Alright, generic, plasticky, BMX-y pedals. I'm gonna do this cable. Might as well do this housing. It's clunky. I think it's brake housing. It says SIS, SP. I don't know. There's no reason not to do it. I'm going to save this old piece and the piece off the derailleur so I can cut the new ones down to length. You can see they're always a little flat and bent and mangled at the ends. So I cut mine a little bit extra long. Let's see if we can find a nice new stainless. See, it's all rusty and crusty and getting rusty and making friction and being a jerk. Get a new stainless shift cable as well. Okay, so I got brand new shift cable and housing put on. New cable in. Fought this bottom bracket guide. It's some early two-piece one. They're a pain. Overly thought out, overly complicated nonsense. Brand new housing has pre-lined lube. I cut it to the right length, a little bit long. Cut it flush towards the grinder. Make sure it was real flat, a little bzz, 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 so it doesn't overheat. Pokey tool it out so it's nice and clear. It's all on. I'm gonna take a little flathead screwdriver. Just make sure these pulleys don't have big goobers on them, big dry old grease goobers, or you're gonna make it a pain to set up the shifting and the chain, or just make it feel gross. Like just scrape them off the flathead, both sides of the pulley, both sides of the teeth, and then we will dump some chain lube down inside the little metal pulley plates on these pulleys. Get some lube under them. Since it's a different chain and a different cassette, we can't assume this is lined up. It already looks like it's farther out. So I'm going to have to play with these limit screws. So one says H and one says L, and sometimes you can see high, hard. So it's the littlest one. I'm going to turn it in a little bit. And that's probably too much. Kind of want this pulley lined right up. Maybe. I'm going to turn the limit out a little bit and we'll play with it later. Get it to line up. So you want that chain to shift up onto this big cog real easy, but never be able to fall off. So really these limit screws are just that, they're door stops. The front one lines up the pulley to the cog, and the back one stops it from going over. So you don't want them to go fall off either side, but you want them to shift up real easy. It's a little tricky thinking about it like a door stop. Brand new swap meet scored Z51. Speaking of swap meets, friend Krishna is doing another one at the Rose City Food Court Parks on 53rd and Sandy here in Portland. So, you know, if you're around, come down. I'm going to bring everything I got there. Sell it cheap. I need to get out from under all of these projects I'm only medium excited on. I just have too much stuff. And I'm going to have to move real soon. So it's got to go. It's all clutter and paying for a storage unit. That's just crazy. Through the front derailleur. Shimano's got this little chain guide tooth down here. I always gotta wind through there. As I was grind on there and you wonder what's wrong with your chain. I have it on the little because you want to make sure it can be in that gear and have some tension. So I'm going to pull it tight. So I take this much of the chain off, and that's going to give me our starting position, which is probably fine, which is tight on the little. So the littlest it's ever going to be. We might have to take another link out. Well, probably not because it's tight. You might have to add a link if you have a really big ring and a really big ring. These aren't big. I bet this will be fine. I know guys do that too. You can set up the chain by going big and holding it up and adding a link before you break the chain. There's lots of stuff you can do, but I've learned like 5 different ways of setting up chains and used them each for years, kind of exclusively, and then stopped and switched and done other stuff. So we will see if this way works. Mostly I don't like my chain being too loose. So this way seems to work pretty good. And if it's not long enough to go with the big rings, then you have other problems. Because you can't have it be loosey-goosey. Goes right up and on that big ring. Cannot push off. Falls right back onto my little ring without going too far or having a hard time falling onto it. So the limits are, in theory, probably right where we need them. Let's try shifting it. One click, it's trying, there's no tension. I'm going to add some tension. And it shifts. Let's make sure that this housing is seated. Yank on this cable to really make sure the housing is all seated, everything's stretched out, and yeah, it's got no tension at all. Probably have to tighten it up down here. Run these barrel adjusters all the way back in. All the way in, then back a little turn, just in case we accidentally tighten it too tight. People say you don't want to pull it too tight because you can move the whole derailleur and stuff. Yeah, maybe, but it always needs some tension, so I pull it a little too tight. It's usually right on the money. Especially this old, sloppy, probably half worn out stuff. One click, one shift, one click, one shift. And it shifts up on this back one. I think I just need to limit out a little bit more. Still shift up and in real easy, cannot shift over. On friction, and a lot of old mechanics, they'll just make it. They'll just keep letting it out until it does overshift into your spokes, and then bring it in a little bit, because they want to know right where it is. They want to know you get the most out of it possible without it falling over. That's probably the smartest way. I definitely do it with friction. Not super worried with index. I feel like it's still coming down a little too easy, so I add a little bit more tension. I'm going to shift up nice and fast, shift down nice and fast, not have it hesitate either direction. I bet it's mostly good. I'm going to pop on a cable tip. I'm going to lube all these pivots and lube the shifter because maybe that's why it's being a slight bit of a brat. Everything's probably just old and stiff. Yeah. I'm going to be fun and put on a little red cable tip. Ha-cha! Got my handy dandy little bottle of Tri-Flow. Going to come in and I'm going to put some lube around the threads on the barrel adjuster. Let them sink in. All these little pivot points, everything that moves and pivots, springs, a few drops. Get in there and make things work nice. There are all these pulley plates. bottom pivots, pulley plates on the backside. You can always take the backside of the derailleur cage off. It's really easy, and open the pulleys up and clean the gunk out and lube them. That's a good thing to do too. Do this front derailleur. I already did the front cable in the bottom bracket. Come up here and pop these cables and housing out. So this front derailleur, I'm going to, with my fingers, shift into the biggest gear just to take all the tension off, so I can pop it out of the braze-on. And now I can just sort of slide it down. I can drip 5 or 6 drops of lube in there. If you do more than 4 or 5, it will pour out the other end and leak down the cable and make a mess. Do the same thing with these brakes. Stupid dust boots. Same thing with this brake, running the rear derailleur cable because it's all brand new and pre-lubed. Just a few drops down around that cable, down into the housing. And there's this back brake up here as well. Drip, drip, drip. Gonna let that sink in. Oh, we're gonna do the brake pivots, doing around the head of the bolt, so you can sneak down in, under there and into those pivots. You can also, if the spring's exposed, you can hit where the spring touches. Also, I come and do up under the shifter, and this little piece of housing, on the cable head, around the bottom, anywhere I can, where it seems like it might make everything smoother. And even these brake pivots, just a little bit where the cable head goes in, because they can sometimes be noisy. Let's get this front wheel in. I'm going to match it up the direction of the logo on the back so it's readable from the drive side. So now I know which side is the drive side, which side is the non-drive side. Remember to put your springs on the right way. Everyone puts them on the wrong way. Big end out, little end against the axle. You can see only this side's pivoting and moving, so either the wheel's in crooked, the brakes need to be adjusted, or something. The wheel looks pretty straight. Not straight enough, apparently. We haven't lubed these front pivots yet, so it's right around the bolt head. I hope it goes into the little brass bushing. Might even do this, just make it a little more friction free. Now it's moving pretty nicely. This side's still moving a little bit more. This side has a little set screw, or a tiny Allen head. Only one side has it, so I can tighten or loosen this screw to center the brake. So I'm going to tighten it a little bit. And instantly that made it move equal amounts on both sides. Dope, dope. Oh, front shifter. Same thing, put the front shifter back together. Got to take all the tension off by moving the derailleur out. Slide this cable housing into the cable stop. And now we should be golden. Making sure it shifts in the front like it should on all the gears in the back. High and low anyways. So put in the biggest gear in the back and the front to make sure this derailleur still has plenty of room, and it does. I almost might want to take a link out. What is left to do? Get the stem straight and tighten it. Double check the headset on the ground. I'm going to pull this whole seat post out and grease it. We're going to put a not destroyed saddle on and some new grips. That and a little bit of wipe down. This bike, well, needs some air in the tires. This bike is done. Make a little tuned up sales sheet for it and put it up for very cheap. And hopefully it disappears real quick. I'm probably just going to take it straight down to Tomcat Bikes and hope he sells it for me. He takes a third, but it's out of my way. I don't have much into it. If he gets 3 for it, means I get 2 for it. I got 50, 60, 70, 80, I don't know, 80-ish bucks into it. Plus my time. 2 is not enough, but it's fine, especially if it's out of my way. And it was fun to do. Kinda. I don't know. Seat a post. Yep, that's tall. And gross. Old dried grease. Shoot some fresh grease in. Shoot, shoot, shoot. It's pretty straight. Booty. Seat, seat, seat. Grips, grips, grips. Alright, let's do some fun stuff. Like kicking over the recycling. That stem looks straight-ish. I've never got a stem straight in my life. Let's do the head set. Okay, tighten that down. Flippity floppity. Want to flip and flop and move under gravity. Pretty easy. I put it on the ground, put the wheel sideways, so we want to feel anything with the headset. Squeeze the front brake. Rock back and forth. Feel the tires, it's a little bit low. I can't feel any play in these bearings. And they're still smooth. So make sure this cup doesn't move anymore, this bottom one. So see if we can sneak one of these wrenches skinny enough in here. Alright. Hold it in place while just tightening the top. Nope. And why is that bottom one wanting to move? Maybe it really does need another spacer. Whoa. Still ultra smooth. No play. We're gonna call it good. If it comes loose again someday, we'll put a little 1mm spacer in or something. Really, I'm gonna do these grips. I'm gonna take it for a test ride and hope it doesn't need brake pads. Here are some grips I got brand new in the bag at the salvage sales. So I probably paid about 12 cents for them. It's $2 a pound. Seems like it's a good time as any. They got the little wristy stuff. Got a little lock on, dude. Oh yeah, nicey. Just gonna guesstimate on the angle. Probably have to get them real tight on the ground. Oh, this can't go on far enough because this thing is too in the way. Move this brake lever in just a bit. Looks pretty good from this angle. Beautiful. But I did leave myself with no dust caps, so I gotta find something that'll work. Ha! Found a couple little ones from the old Sunday salvage sales from last time, brand new in a bag. Cost like 1/10 of 1 penny, I'm sure. No one else cares, but it's all about those details, man. I was looking for sexy whole bikes to flip, and I was like, yeah, some bar end plugs, yeah, some new grips. All right. Didn't want to go crazy digging. There's about on top. It's vinyl, so it's waterproof. It goes off. It's got the little women's comfort channel, and this is reflective material on the back. What a saddle for this bike. Kind of gray and black and kind of matchy-matchy, and like I said, more importantly, right on the top of the pile. I put most of my saddles into storage in a couple big bags, so I won't have a few here. I have too much shit. Sorry, crappy old dead saddle. Ooh, it's got chromo rails. That's like extra cool. I probably actually love this saddle. Probably should have kept it for myself. Lol, whatever. Alright, to test ride. Back from my test drive. Everything went flawless. The brakes were like weird for a second and perfect, and they feel great. They're very stoppy. I don't leave these pads on, they're brand new, they're just a little old, but not too old. Stop great, not that much leverage. Shifts great. Nothing weird at all. So, just gonna make up a little sales sheet with a serial number and size and all that stuff, and go drop this off at Tomcat, see if he'll sell for me. And he sold a different bike I had, so I'll see if I can get a check for that thing. Too tight, whatever.